joystick on there if you need to move it. It's on your right hand.
Right hand.
She's not a gamer.
Brandon from Investment Joy has 2 of the fastest growing TikTok and YouTube channels focused on passive income. If you've ever seen a vending machine or laundromat video, it's probably him. Today we sit down to talk about how he got started, his motivations, and his 5-year plan. Big favor, give this a thumbs up to help with the algorithm, and if you are someone new here, consider subscribing. Hey guys, it's Sebastian, and today we are interviewing
Brandon with Investment Joy.
So what do you do? What's your channel about?
My channel is mostly just a day in the life of a guy that owns 138-ish rentals. I own 2 laundromats, 2 car washes. I own like 17 vending machines, and then I do YouTube and TikTok. As of this moment, I've got 2.7 million followers on TikTok and just hit 1 million on YouTube. But to my not benefit, it's mostly from YouTube Shorts. So it's not real, but they're going to send me a plaque anyway.
If his hands look familiar, it's because you've probably seen them, because he does a lot of first person.
Yeah, if you've watched a YouTube short or a TikTok and there's some guy getting quarters from a laundromat, most likely it's me. I guess no one sees my face anymore. I had like 3 people recognize me on the flight here from Ohio, but essentially no one knew my face. And I was like, crap.
So how did you start YouTube? I think that's a common question people.
My content deal actually starts back in 2013. I got into property investment like as a full-time investment deal. And I was like, you know, it'd be cool if I documented this whole process, because I knew that I had access to the capital that I needed to be successful. Capital was always my problem. And I knew from day one in July 2013, if I could get access to the capital I needed, I'd be successful. I'm like, that's the final piece to build this income producing wall. Here it is. Wouldn't it be cool to document the whole process? So I bought a domain name for $8, which was investmentjoy.com.
That's a pretty affordable domain.
From a domain name, it was highly brandable, and it was already a brand before that, but the brand collapsed. I was like, okay, for $8, I am taking this thing over. So I started doing a blog about rehabbing cheap properties in Southern Ohio. I do before pictures, after pictures, do a breakdown of my estimate, my rehab estimates, whether I failed or not, and how much money ended up producing in the ROI from the income. And there's a way, if you go to investmentjoy.com, there's that old blog that's been on there since 2013. So 2017 came around and I bought a train station, which I thought was like the coolest thing ever. I was like, it'd be cool if I got into YouTube videos and documented the renovations to this train station. And 500 views later, I was furious. It was a train station that turned into a hostel. Then they turned it into a hotel after the hostel. Then they turned it into apartments. And when they turned it into apartments, that's when I took the train station over. I just thought it was like the coolest thing ever, but it didn't go anywhere. The video didn't go anywhere. And I had some other videos about properties in my portfolio, how to buy cheap properties in Southern Ohio, and just nothing did it. I had one video over 3 years. It got 50,000 views. I got demonetized because at one point you had to have like 100 subscribers and like 1,000 minutes. It was like nothing, and you could get monetized. I was making like $100 a month. And then they demonetized me, and I was like, man, this is crap. And then I bought the laundromat, and I thought, this is really, really cool. And you know what? I'm going to start treating YouTube like a business. So I'm going to spend time shooting content on this laundromat, and I'm going to spend time on actually trying to figure out what does YouTube want. And it doesn't take very long to find out that YouTube wants titles and thumbnails. And then at that time, they were really big on 12-minute videos and over. And it's just, I got those together. I was on Graham Stephan's show, the call-in show. And I already had 2,000 subscribers by that point, but wasn't monetized. Got to monetization like October the 7th, 2019, and then just it exploded. One day with 700,000 views, and it was just, that was it.
Was there one video in particular that
it was how much money does a laundromat make? The thumbnail was a bucket of quarters and on my desk at the laundromat, and that was it. It was a good thumbnail, 14 to 15 minute video. The editing was done on a mobile editor for my phone.
Oh, wow.
All self-shot, and it just was poorly edited, but I had a really good thumbnail and title. And that was it. I just have been trying to constantly improve how I do YouTube videos, and then I got TikTok, and those started exploding, and everything's been really good so far. But it's also, I'm trying to figure out what's the next steps look like for me in the YouTube field, because I'm trying to pare down my time, spend less time doing real estate management of my rentals, doing less time at the laundromat. But now I'm down to like 30 minutes a week on the laundromat. I'm doing like 2 or 3 hours on the car wash, and that's it. I'm spending most of my time on my rentals, but I've got a full-time assistant now, and she spends a lot of effort on the rentals. And last month was our best month ever. Last month we did $47,500 gross rent. $60,000 is the goal, but I've got to get my trailer park a little more efficient. I think of the 47.5, I think our net was 17.5. But we're still spending a lot of money on CapEx. We're cash flow positive this month. Our expenses right now are sitting at like $28,000 for the month, and we're at $44,000, I think. Because I was looking at the numbers on the plane. Yeah, so we're coming out of this strong, but we'll be making money pretty well. But I'm trying to get my time involvement in the rentals down so I can do more filming with YouTube.
What was the hardest learning curve part of it when you were starting out?
Editing's been really terrible. Just learning the software. I use DaVinci Resolve now for everything. And that's just been going from editor to editor to editor to editor. And I realize that Adobe Premiere is like the golden standard. Everybody uses Premiere, but I have some friends that are really big into Resolve, and they're like, they know I'm a cheapskate. Everybody knows I'm a cheapskate, so like Resolve is free and really, really good. So I've been learning Resolve, and unfortunately it's at a point, it's better than I am, and it's a very deep piece of software. So I'm just trying to learn all the different things that I can do with it. The color grading's world class on it, and they've got a lot of really good like text effects and renderings. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, I need to build a gaming PC just so I can render spreadsheets, because it'll pop the numbers out in 3D.
That's crazy. I'm starting to think I need to actually play with that.
If I had to go back, I would be comfortable with either. It's just learning, and I've had to relearn 3 editors. The camera technology, I just absolutely love. I love talking and looking at the actual technology behind the cameras, the sensors, and how they work and stuff. So that's been relatively simple and straightforward. There's been some difficulty of getting all the multiple pieces together working.
As things have scaled, having the assistant was probably the most...
Oh my gosh, yes. And I told my assistant, I said, by mid-2022, you've got to be ready for your assistant. And she's really excited about that. She's like, I can't believe it. I'm like, no, you're good. She's got skin in the game. She's got equity as far as I'm concerned.
How'd you find her?
A referral, my car wash buddy. He said, I know the manager of a CVS, and they just lost their assistant manager. And I'm probably off on the CVS, or it was a Walgreens type situation, but they lost their assistant manager, and she needs to be poached. Go get her. And so we did an interview. She did pretty good. Her hourly rate was phenomenally good. And we told her, look, we said, we're going to start you off on the base rate, but there's going to be all the opportunity in the world to make money. And I am big on like worker equity. Like, not that I want them to actually have equity in my LLCs or anything like that, but I'm like, I want you to not feel like you're capped or constrained on the amount of money you can make for me. So one of the things like we did with her was any amount like delinquency that we have within the rental company or with our storage locker facility or whatever, you go get the money, and all of the fees that have built up, and it's thousands and thousands of dollars, you can have. Just, we'll write you a check, I'll pay you in cash, whatever, we'll figure out a way for you to get all those fees. And she has freaking worked her freaking butt off for the past 2 months cleaning up all our accounts. And I am lower right now with all the rentals, the 138 that she's over. I have lower delinquencies now than I had when I was personally managing 30.
That's great.
It's incredible. And so our cash flow is just through the roof right now. So we're coming out of coronavirus really strong, but now the equity and everything, even in Southern Ohio, I got equity in my properties coming out of my ears. So now I'm starting to pare down on my single family detached, keeping my multifamilies, but selling my single family since there's just so much equity in them right now, which I'm hoping that's the right choice. I've been worried about a bubble or an incline for quite some time, because I got my real estate license in 2006, but I was going back and looking at comps in 03, 04, 05 in the Central Ohio area, and there were so many times in those years that buying a rental property didn't make any sense. They were cash flowing at like a 6 or 7% cap rate, even in a Class C neighborhood. And if you're only cash flowing at 7% in a C-class neighborhood, why even bother? It isn't worth it for the risk.
So it's actually a pretty good tactic to find who wants to actually work with you and believes in your brand versus someone just looking for a paycheck. Because I've seen a lot of people who are like, oh, I want to get paid exactly what I was paid before. And it's like, no, the opportunity here isn't necessarily the same rate. It's more that there's upside. It's like what you bring in, you probably get half of, or you get some percentage of it.
And that's, to me, it's just incredible. But I'm very thankful to have the assistant that I have now. But then I'm trying to kind of bake down, how did we find this person so I can find a couple more of them.
Did you go through a lot of other people before her though?
Oh my gosh, yes. I told him about the family member I had to fire and how disastrous that was. This is my 4th assistant. And it's like, and I'm not good. One of the things, I'm not good at training people. So one of the benefits here is we have a professional office, and she sits a little farther than from me to you. So every time she has a problem, Brandon, how do I do this? And I've told her, I'm like, I will teach you everything you need to know. I'll show you how I want it done, but I don't want you to keep asking me over and over and over again. And this is like the first time I've felt like I tell her 2 times at best, and then she's got it. She doesn't ask me ever again. And it's been so aggravating for me as an employer, because I would go in and I would do screen captures. I've been doing this in my company for 3 years. I would do screen captures going through the steps of how do you do a background check? How do you do a tenant deposit? How do you write a receipt? We're doing all these things, and I would hand them to my prior assistants and say, hey, just go watch the video. I'm showing you step by step how to do this. And granted, one of the assistants was in one part of the building and I was in the other part of the building, so you had to walk like 3 minutes if you had a question. Which, I mean, maybe that was the problem, but I don't think the videos were ever watched. And it was just so aggravating to me. I'm like, I spent all this time editing a video down, pre-YouTube, to make it work, and you just didn't watch it.
I've made hour-long videos where I literally walk through my editing process and I hand it off to other people, and they don't follow it. So in my head, I'm like, did you watch any of this, or did you try it all?
And I'm testing out editors, because I have to outsource my entire editing process, but on top of that, I want it to be kind of in a certain way. And I've got 2 editors right now, and I'm thinking that I can just balance them, and I'm kind of happy with both of them. But the problem is that I have, and everybody's different on their editing, is I don't script anything. I can't script me going to a laundromat and being robbed. Mm-hmm. And I had that happen. A guy literally busting out stuff and taking money out of machines, and I show up with my phone. I'm like, sir, have you thought about what you're doing, that you're actually robbing me? And I guilt tripped the guy for like 5 minutes in the video. It was hilarious. I was laughing the whole time. The guy was totally freaked out. It was great. But I'm like, I can't script that. And then when you hand it off to an editor, it's like, how do you make that right? And it's like, well, you should just edit out the bad parts or the stupid parts or whatever, and just show it as it is. But then I hop around so much on a shoot. And that's why I'm wanting to do the live stream of just, hey, this is what my life's like as a guy that owns all these rentals and goes through all these things, and just everything's recorded. And then we can go back and snip, an hour worth of 4 episodes. If I can get 4 episodes in one day of shooting, I will be just thrilled.
If like Vice or some other service came to you and they're like, hey, we want to make this like a show or something, would you do that?
Yes and no, but the problem is I've had somebody come with an actual show, like a cable TV channel, and they sent me the documents for what that contract looks like, and I would not do that in a million years.
It's not competitive, or just a lot of...
They want your brand.
Oh.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be Investment Joy anymore. I would be there, and some of the one of them, it was you had to buy your brand back from them if you wanted a release before their time.
And was it like a 10-year contract or
5-year contract? Yeah, it's a 5-year. I got myself in trouble, but hey, this is why you subscribe to him. It was a 5-year contract with a major cable station, and I want to say it was like TLC, but I probably wasn't TLC. But it was like one of those things. It was a 5-year contract. They gave the content creator, who does similar stuff to me, $500,000 down, and the deal was they're going to show up with a film crew, and you're going to shoot for 2 weeks, every day for 2 weeks. And at the end of 2 weeks, they hand you a $500,000 check. Then they have an option of renewing it for a total of 5 seasons. So it's not at your discretion whether you want the release, it was at their discretion. And then the option fee, if they excise the option for season 2, 3, 4, and 5, the option fee that you get paid is a whopping $100,000. So a 5-year stint with them was going to be $900,000. If you think about how much money a series could make for a agency in 5 years, and their upper limit for the content creator or the person is $900,000. To me, it just doesn't make it work. It doesn't make sense. Now, I'm not opposed to like the idea of working with a manager or somebody to help me get more organized, because I'm so like not hyperactive, but like ADHD. I just constantly have stuff going in my mind and projects and things I want to do, and just constantly all over the place. If I had more people in my corner helping me get organized on that stuff, I'd be totally up for it. But I know enough to realize that selling my brand out for, you know, a fee, I would have to really sit down and think about it. And that's unfortunately what I've seen with some of these deals that have been offered.
Kind of a random tangent, but does your wife help you out with any of the business stuff?
Absolutely not.
No?
No, she has no interest in it whatsoever.
So by her choice. She's just like, I don't care.
Yeah. I've told, because my wife's the opposite personality. I am so flighty and all over the place, and she is strict and organized.
That sounds like she'd be able to...
Oh, and I told her, I said, honey, we would own the entirety of Southern Ohio by this point in our lives if you would work with me. But she's at home, stay-at-home mom watching the kids, and she's fine with that. I'm fine with her being that. So I've told her, I said, I'm essentially going to have to go out and hire like 2 of you to do what you could do yourself. Because I told you earlier, my wife used to manage a restaurant, and she was the one that was, she was at a point as the manager of a restaurant telling everybody, including the owner, what to do. Because she's very, very firm. And I love her to death, but she's very firm, especially with the kids, on stuff. And I'm like, that's kind of what I need, is somebody here that's firm to help me get everything structured, because I have a hard time saying no to people. And I'm getting better at it, but it's been a very slow process.
And then long term, we've talked about a few things you're working on, or like what your kind of 5 years looks like, but can you expand on that?
There's so much in the 5-year plan. I've got like, I think we talked about this. I've got a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan, and technically a 30-year plan. I've got up to like age 70 at this point. It's awful. And they keep changing because it accelerates. But my 3 to 5-year plan is to start like in-source education for side hustles and that whole thing. But I want to do it in an over-the-shoulder way, to where it's like, rather than you just watching static content, you're going to go along with Brandon and he's going to show you how all this stuff works. Like I'm just going to show you guys how to do XYZ with real estate or whatever. So I'm working on that now, and that kind of comes into play with the live stream show that I'm working on. I want to do some more real estate syndication. I want to do more affordable housing initiatives. I'm going to do, once I get my Cybertruck, I'm going to do a spin-off channel. I've got a cousin, and he is an absolute world-class engineer, and he works for maintenance for the city, because that's what he does. But he's an insane engineer, and I'd like to get him on payroll, because I've got these ideas and things that I want to do. Like I've got tiny house concepts and unique building construction methods that I want to do, and I can sit down, I can do some 3D modeling. I'm not good at 3D rendering and stuff like that, or 3D printing, but I'm serviceable enough to kind of to sketch ideas. And I'd love to have a team at some point to help me implement some of these things, because I've spitballed ideas with him on here. You know what life's going to look like 10 years from now with electric vehicles and autonomous driving, and the fact that everybody's going to have a battery system on wheels that can power a house. And like, you got a house power on wheels. What can we do with this technology wise? And we've sat down there, spitballed ideas, and it's like a year's worth of YouTube content just implementing these ideas that I could do with a Cybertruck. But then that would come into play that I have an engineer in my corner for my affordable housing ideas and initiatives and things like that. I'm really big on like solar energy and some of these things you could do with doing it affordably, because I'm such a cheapskate. I can't go into too much detail, but I just did a deal and I got a whole crap ton of solar panels for free. And I've got a scheme that I can do to get container ship, well, not container ships, 40-foot containers of solar panels for free. I'll tell you off camera how I do it. I've got a video, if you watch one of my YouTube videos, they're sitting in the background. It's a corner of a warehouse with solar panels. They're all free. And it's just like, we're just gonna start doing weird solar projects, but I don't have time to implement them. And just kind of go on with those things to talk about the efficiency and how things work. I've got a builder, and I'm hoping to implement this in my 1 to 3 year plan. I got a builder that's going to build me an apartment complex at his cost. A full apartment complex. And what I want to do with that specific segment is show people what is the builder markup, what's the materials, and why do things cost the way they do. You know, we're in Las Vegas right now, and I see these big things, and you know, this market's pretty affordable right now compared to LA. I've got a friend that's a big time house builder in California, and we've broken down the fees of why he's charging $500,000 for a house compared to $250,000 in Ohio. And why are those prices different? It'd just be nice to bring some transparency and show people in a transparent manner how some of that stuff works. I'd like to think that I do it with my laundromat and vending machines and show how much people I make.
Might as well show the other
Yeah, I want to expand to the other things, like how much, why do things cost the way they do? Because I worry about people feel like entrepreneurs and people in the business industry are kind of dishonest about what they do, and it's like, no, they're not being dishonest. It's just how things are. And I'd like to bring transparency to business and entrepreneur type stuff over the next 1 to 5 years.
On the note of entrepreneurs, have you done any startup investing, or is it something that you're kind of avoiding?
I am the first investor in my buddy's contracting company. Can I say the name?
Yeah.
It's called Contractor Plus. He is in the field of providing invoicing, payment gateways, scheduling, time management for contractors. And I think it's just an absolutely wonderful segment to be in startups, because the medical field is like, if I'm quoting these numbers off the top of my head, the medical field is like a $2 trillion industry. Of that $2 trillion, $500 billion of it's wrapped up in software. It's like 25% of the entire industry is software. And then you look at, I'm trying to think of what other ones were out there. Well, anything in the IT field, like anything with computers, software is 50% of it.
I feel like even farming,
Yeah, everything's getting more technical. Then you get into contracting and skilled trades. And of a $2 trillion skilled trade contracting world, software accounts for less than $10 billion.
Wow.
You understand it probably better than a lot of people would if you deal with startups and anything with automation. You're like, there's a lot of room for automation. You talk to your average person in skilled trades or construction, they're like, there's no room for automation here. It's like, who does your invoicing? Oh, Frida at the office. Like, you don't need her. Who does the site drafts? Oh, well, we have this department. You could get like a Matterport and you could scan the job in and it would do it automatically. And there's all these different things, and just time management. My assistant's spending half of her week doing time management for my contractors, and they're integrating the app, and we're seeing the time commitment go down. And I'm like, well, okay, so I'm going to fund his company, and then they gave me some equity because of my YouTube stuff, and so I gave him some money and got in on that. I would like to get in on startups more, but I really like the idea of using my influence and stuff to help out startups as opposed to just throwing wads of cash at them. I'm totally not opposed to doing startup funding if I really truly believed in the company.
I feel like we've talked about this off camera before, but would you take sponsorship money in equity, or do like affiliate as equity instead of
Absolutely, cash? Yeah, because if you could get a unicorn that goes up through the IPO range, you're 100xing. And the thing is, if a startup had access to extremely cheap advertising, or they didn't have to pay for it, you look at startups and what their cost to acquire a new customer is. Some of these companies, their product has a median revenue of $35 per user. They're spending 30 of it on bringing them on board.
Sometimes even more.
I've seen, I don't know why, but it's like $35 per revenue per customer and $30 in advertising. I've seen a lot of those. And it's like, well, if we did influencer marketing, and there's a company, and I don't want to name drop, but there's a big company and they have a $1 billion a year budget, and they've completely got rid of all their ads, like all print media, all normal YouTube ads, and they're going totally for influence marketing because they've seen that influencer marketing has the highest return of any possible field out there. And you think, oh, now you have taken a startup that's cash poor and you've just given them a superior advertising product for free. I think it could be the differentiator between a successful startup and a poor performing startup, or one that runs out of money. And a lot of startups run out of money spending on advertising that doesn't work. That doesn't mean that every startup's worth it, but I think that if you had an influencer that really understood the industry real well and a startup that was really well met, I think it's just an absolute match made in heaven.
It's crazy to me though that a lot of startups seem to be, I guess they don't know the potential of content creators or their relationship, because a lot of them will be like, why would we do this when we can just buy Facebook ads?
There's plenty of cases to be made for something like Facebook ads or YouTube pre-roll ads, or just any type of marketing that's out there. But the problem is people get fixated on, I've run into so many people that are just fixated on Facebook ads, and they do a demographic drill down. And then you say something to them about, hey, you ever consider retargeting? And they're like, oh, we don't believe in black magic here. And I'm like, really? Because you could retarget and it's 1/6 of the price. Oh no, we won't do that. I'm like, you're on the pathway to bankruptcy here. Just because they haven't heard it and they don't understand it, so they just don't even try.
So one other thing I've seen people push back on, especially viewers, is, well, how can we trust you now that you have equity instead of taking cash? But for me, my view is that, if anything, I should believe in the brand a lot more because I have equity, I have long-term belief in it versus just grabbing a bag of money.
Yeah, and you know, to me, it would remove the objection for somebody watching content on social media of they paid them a lot of money to say this. I don't think anybody understands how many engagement emails that both you and I get. We haven't talked about this at all, but the number of scams that I get emails from daily, and it's obscene on TikTok. I get them daily on YouTube. It's 5 times worse on TikTok. Hey, if you would promote this crummy crypto platform, we'll give you $100,000. And it's like, I will not do this because this is the worst thing I've ever heard of. I mean, this is outright scam. I wouldn't be surprised if you're not trying to download a virus to my computer right now. It's that scammy. I have had apps that were viruses asked to advertise on me, on my channel too. Like outright viruses.
That's crazy.
Russian firms that are installing keyloggers and stuff on people's systems.
That's crazy. I feel like I'm in the same boat, but with lower numbers. I've gotten a lot of like crypto pump and dump ones.
Yeah, crypto pump and dump, NFT pump and dumps, but TikTok has viruses. And it's just, it's crazy. I could be wrong here, but I've had emails from Chinese firms and they're like USB powered devices that don't make any sense whatsoever. And I'm like, these are keyloggers. Guarantee they're keyloggers. Why would I want a light up flower to plug into my computer for $2? I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. Having said all that, it removes the objection in my mind from the user saying, hey, I've got long-term skin in the game. I'm not going to get paid for 5 years. To me, that would be, but as a creator, you have to create that selling point for a user and say, hey, this is why I want you to consider this thing.
Yeah, I think it's a long-term play. I feel like if you go back 5 years into the YouTube world, people were very much against monetization or sponsorships. Like if you were sponsored, it's like, oh, you're selling out. But now they're like, yeah, just grab the bag of money. But we're still at that phase where equity is, I think, a very weird topic.
Yeah. Now, it's a weird topic in the money and finance world. It's even worse for not in the money and finance world. But if people would understand, this is what Mr. Beast does.
Yes, he actually does a lot of investing that people don't know about. And same with pretty much every celebrity out there, Will Smith, any big celebrity or rapper or basketball player or NFL player.
They're diversifying in that way. And I think as time goes on, people will understand it. But then again, you've got, oh my gosh, how many Will Smith funded ventures have I seen in the past 2 months? It's like his name's on everything. Well,
what was the worst one that we saw, Mandy? Not Hillary Duff. It was like
Lindsay Lohan.
Oh gosh,
I saw so many like Lindsay Lohan deals. It's like, oh, we're backed by her. I'm like, okay.
I think it was Cash App. I'm pretty sure it was, and it was we are a Lindsay Lohan backed. But I thought this is not a selling point for Brandon.
So I've talked about how I've invested in some startups and how I might like review it. Do you think there's a way around that? That's, I guess, the viewer wouldn't mind, especially if I'm not even investing large sums of money.
Reviewing a product that you have invested in?
Yeah, it seems tough, right?
No.
Not really?
Not really. Okay. If you believe in the product, you believe in the product. I would think that if you invested in something, I would hope that you'd be kind of intimately involved with it. It's the reason I like Tesla so much, because I geek out over Tesla stuff and Elon tweets and all that stuff on a daily basis almost. So when I have put so much of my retirement in Tesla stock, I'm like, I have researched this thing as much as I humanly can do. I believe in it. I trust it. Here, Elon, here's some more money, like you need it. But, I feel like I'm very heavily vested into it, and I research everything, and I'm very defensive of Tesla. And I know for a fact I'm not the only person that believes it, that feels that way. But as of today, I'm up like 1,400%. And a lot of other people are out there like that too. And for me, it's like, I'm a believer in this. I like it. I enjoy it. This is important to me. And then I talk to other people about it, and I'm an investor in a very, very small fraction, of course, compared to the large market. But they don't have that question of, why do you like Tesla so much?
Oh, he's talking about Tesla because he's an investor. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that's not an objection. I'm sure, I can see it for being a little smaller company, but really, really?
Especially if you're not I would say even a majority shareholder or anything. Like if you're tiny check inside, you're trying to add value as a creator. And then especially in the personal finance world where so much of what we say is provable, right? Like you can be like, hey, this is a good card because it earns 3% and everything else in the market earns 2%. So therefore it's good. Without the fact that you're an investor, people seem fine with it. But the fact that you're now an investor, even though all the other information is still true, just push back.
I can understand the conflict of interest, but you know, the problem is you talk about ethics and business and stuff like that. No matter what you do, everybody's going to have an objection. I mean, it's the disaster of reading YouTube comments because I have an objection. Do you
still read your comments?
I try not to because I get depressed really quick because I'm like, I'll read through the comments. I'm like, man, I did not mean for that piece of content to come off like that. And I'm like, I don't think there's a way for me to present it in a better way. It is what it is.
Especially when you get a lot of viewers, I think there are going to be some people who get pissed off. And as a creator, I think it's really easy to ignore the 100 positive comments and focus in on that one negative one.
Yeah, and if there was a way to procedurally do it, like set up a bot, just scraped all your comments and then set it up in tag clouds, and you could pull out user sentiment based on their comments, I would be fine. I would be great with that. But then I have to calm myself down a lot because reading through comments like, oh, this is the day you ended your channel. Like, this is the last video. Like, no one could trust you. And you're like, very negative comments. And I did a sponsored post for a company I liked. It was a company I liked. I felt their product was good. I did a video about, I'm like, hey, I found this thing and I think it's going to help you. And hundreds upon hundreds, maybe 500 negative comments about it. And I was like, oh my gosh. But then if I'd sit down, the video has like an 80% like ratio, which is bad for my channel, but it's still serviceable. And you know, at the end of the day, I had some people DM me on Discord and said, hey, thanks for sharing that app with me because you showed it to me, I was able to pay for my groceries and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, cool, that was the goal. But man, to have 100+ people rip, you know, Investment Joy's channel, can't trust you anymore. It's like, oh gosh.
Have you had people try to cancel you, like specifically have a vendetta against you, or not yet?
We talked about this earlier. I had one person back in 2019 when I first started out. They felt I was the world's worst slumlord taking advantage of poor people in Southern Ohio, and they were going to report every single rental I had to a government agency. I was like, you know, if I figure out where you live, which I kind of did, I'm going to send every tenant that ends up on the street to your house. And it stopped. I
feel like I've heard from a lot of other YouTubers where they try to, basically someone comes in and tries to sue them or does something, claim damages or.
Thankfully, I haven't had to deal with that. I would hope that some of my insurance would pick up something like that. But, you know, on one end, yeah, they can claim damages, but then on the other end, because I've had one person or two people pull that, and I'm like, really? Because this would be really good YouTube content. I'm like, and I understand the libel laws in the state of Ohio pretty well. They have to sue me in the state of Ohio. So if they do that, I'll win a libel suit because I'm not saying anything that's wrong. And even then, if I say something that's opinionated, I will say, this is Brandon's opinion here. I'll win the libel suit. And it's like, and I can document the libel suit and I'll make even more money off of it. And I've had one or two people kind of push around on it, and then they realized I was just gonna make a bunch of money off of them. They stopped because they're in it for the money, and when they understand that I understand that I'm gonna win, I've got a lawyer, it kind of changes things.
So with all the negativity that can exist with social media, how do you make sure you don't take it home? Because you have a family, I think it's a lot harder. Like for me, I feel like I'm always working.
I mean, I take it home, and my family essentially says, "Calm down, Dad. Calm down, honey." And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. I had a bad day at the office with whatever went on, and we're just going to leave it here. And once they remind me that, hey, social media isn't your normal life, I'm like, okay, we're fine. Plus, I've got some pretty decent people that kind of pull me down that are in my kind of community core group in Ohio, and we talk about this stuff pretty often. It's like, okay, you know, I can remain rooted and grounded with just the local community. It helps a lot, as opposed, and that's why I can't maintain the flying to Las Vegas or Austin all the time. I can do it in spurts, and that'll be it.
You think you're staying there forever?
Ohio? Oh yeah, absolutely. I probably won't leave my county. I mean, I can buy a mansion for $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean,
So do you try to carve out, like, is there something every week that you do with the kids or something like Monopoly or something that you try to carve out?
I just try to spend the weekend. My deal is with my wife at 6 o'clock, it's a drop dead time. I'm going home. I have to quit. I mean, there's some exceptions, but very rarely do I try to make an exception past 6 o'clock. It's just a drop dead, I'm going home. Then on the weekends, usually Saturdays, I do whatever I want to with the kids and we go do something fun. I'd like to get to the point that I can start bringing my kids if I go somewhere, but my wife said, you can't take them to Las Vegas, honey. I'm like, yeah, I probably can. They'd be bored out of their mind. But I'm trying to come up with some ideas on integrating my kids.
I've seen a few of them videos that are helping to count money.
I didn't know how to do an appropriate video, but we did the coolest thing ever this last weekend. I took my girls to a craft fair, and they were selling bread and homemade chocolates. And they were there for like an hour and they made $8. And I was like, guys, do you want to listen to Daddy right now? And they were like, you could tell they were pretty disappointed. And I said, all right, Daddy's going to show you what it is to be in sales. And they were like, so how are you going to make us money, Dad? And I said, you're 12 years old and a girl. You're 10 years old and a girl. I said, we're going to go up to every single person in the building and you're going to say, hi, I'm XYZ years old. I said, we're going to come up with a script. And you're going to go to everybody with your script. And my name's so-and-so, and I'm selling fresh baked bread. My sister and I spent this whole week. Could you come by and buy some? My 10-year-old made $80 an hour doing that. Yeah. They went home, and they were both thrilled. They both have enough money to buy a Nintendo Switch each. It's just like one day of selling stuff, and they figured out, and my wife's like, they really made money, and my wife made them repay her for all the ingredients, all the chocolates and stuff, and she's like, there's gas money in there if you need it. I'm like, no, honey, there's not. But my point to my kids was like, Daddy's experienced with sales, because I've been in real estate sales since '06. Like, I understand sales well enough to kind of segment and show them what they need to do to at least make more money than sitting at a table not with the crayon signs, hot chocolate bombs for $4 a piece. Yeah, that's got some appeal. But when you tug on someone's coat and say, please buy off me, like, kids, if you've got it at this point in your life, you might as well use it. We're not doing anything ethical here. And I told them, I'm like, it's going to be very uncomfortable, because they're kind of both introverted, my two older girls. But, stuff like that. And I'd love to figure out a way to ethically document it with how they're doing those things, because they're doing the same things that every other kid does with their own lemonade stand, and a lot of those kids fail at the lemonade stand and they give up. So, and that bothers me.
I think as a YouTuber too, it's kind of tough to draw the line on what's comfortable to film and not film for your kids.
Yeah, because I worry about coming off as he's using his kids. Yes. I'm like, yes, I am using my kids to an extent, but really what I want to do is show those kids that are out there that are on YouTube, even, the kids that are my kids' age, this is what I wish I could teach all the kids. Because I know that there's a lot, I was so lucky and blessed to sit in an office with a former oil CEO. He ran an oil company in Southern Ohio, extremely large. And we were office mates for 4 years. And he blew my mind on a daily basis with just how everything is in the real world. Because I'd never experienced that growing up poor in Southern Ohio. It's like the wealthiest person I knew, or the biggest income earner I knew, worked at a TV plant. And that was like the upper echelon. Oh my gosh, you could be like so-and-so, work at the TV plant and make $40,000 a year. I mean, granted, this was the 90s, but I do the inflation calculator every so often. Like, they made $75,000 a year. That was like the best. And everybody else was half that. And it's like, I wish there was a lot of these things that I knew. And I'm like, well, hey, because of social media, I can teach other people, or at least talk about it. At least if you don't know that there's a problem, or you don't know something's possible for you to obtain in life, you might go through life never hearing it. And then just constantly hearing things from this oil CEO of what he was doing, not only just the mindset shift that I experienced, but all the great things he was doing for people. Because him and his wife every Christmas would get together and provide scholarships. Kids that were in an underperforming school district, he'd just go pluck them out and put them into a private school. Oh. Yeah. Their deal was like kids that can't read. that were getting to that point. They were getting ready to go to the next grade. They still don't have their reading, and they would put them in accelerated reader programs. And he's like, guaranteed within 1 year they can read everything under the sun, because they figured if you can read books, you can self-educate, and that's important. And they do like a dozen scholarships a year for the kids, and they could get them on the hook for, you know, K through 8-ish at a private school. They just would do them. Like, man, I want to be that guy, the guy that goes and rescues a dozen kids a year.
Is that one of your long-term goals, to kind of do that for your county?
Yeah, I would like to do that for I mean, I'd love to do it for my county, but I would like to figure out how to scale it up to a larger thing and just do it nationally. Or, you know, we talked about doing overdubs for some of my videos and doing them in foreign languages. Like, I want to do Mandarin, I want to do Spanish, probably Cantonese too. I would like to do Hindi. Like all the high population areas of the world where there's no finance and business education, we could just overdub stuff that I do and just take it to a different market. Because a lot of, I mean, gosh, I got like 30% international views, and I've talked to people that watch me from Indonesia, in the mountains of Indonesia, and I try to talk to them about entrepreneurial and business stuff. And I'm like, there's such an ability to make money in the middle of nowhere in Indonesia right now. Because I was telling them, they're like, what would you do if you lived here? I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, how much does the average person make in the forest there or in the mountains? And they're like, $500 a year. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if you've got access to $500 a year labor, I'm like, here's what I would do. And I just give them this whole list. None of it made sense. And I'm like, why doesn't it make sense? And they're like, but we want to do X, Y, Z because it sounds interesting. I'm like, you will never own a vending machine or an ATM that makes any money in the mountains of Indonesia. Why don't you take the capital and the resources that you have locally and make a killing with them? And it's just a disconnect because they can't evaluate those kinds of things. And I'm like, unfortunately, I can't spin my wheels trying to help one person out. But you know what? I could try to come up with a system or a way to present this to more people and get more people in my corner to help me assist and say, hey, these are things that you could do.
And that's the power of the internet that I know a lot of people really hate the internet and social media, but I feel like it's opened up so many opportunities for knowledge that people just never had before. Yeah. Like back in the day, like if you were not able to sit down with that CEO and have that conversation, it's like you would still be here, but it would be harder.
As it is now, I could share the story about the oil CEO, some of the quips and the things that he said, and 500,000 people can see it. It's like, oh, wow. Okay, we just provided value, hopefully, to 500,000 people. But it's also the double-edged sword of social media. You have to make it interesting enough to get people to stay. I've got a video on my YouTube channel. It's on how to find mentors and influential people and befriend them. It has like 9,000 views on my YouTube channel. It's absolutely terrible. And I've had some people come out of the woodwork and say, that's one of the best YouTube videos I've ever seen. I'm like, oh gosh, but what? Really, if I'd be honest about it, I need to redo it, make it more glitzy, and probably, it's like a 28-minute video. I need to do it at a 14-minute video. I need to condense it, edit it better, add some B-roll and stuff, spice it up. But still, I'm like, it's still a really good video. You know, as I get better with the media creation and the ways to do it, I get a full editing team, and I'm able to take some of the things I say and turn them into 59-second TikToks or 30-second reels and just migrate that content all over. Then it becomes easy for me to just start churning it out. And that's the content churn. I realize that I'm sure doing the vending machine looks repetitive, which it is repetitive, but on my financial literacy and education, it's even more repetitive because it's hard for me to tell people over and over and over again, buy VTI. Just take money, go buy VTI.
VTI, save money, spend less.
Yeah, just it's the same thing over and over and over again. But you know, if I have a content team, that's their job, is just to keep doing it over again. That is a task I will outsource.
I mean, it works well for Gary Vee.
Yeah.
A lot of it's just hustle, grind. Yeah. What would be your one or multiple tips for new content creators?
Just learn what the platforms want. YouTube wants something, TikTok wants something. Every platform wants something a little bit different. It's usually about user engagement and getting them to interact with your content or at least watch it. The worst thing I run into, and I get on Clubhouse a lot, and you talk to I'm in these YouTube or creator chats, and there are people that are just starting their channel, and they all the vast majority of them start off saying the same thing. Well, I'm going to do this. And it's like, you really need to sit down and see what works first. The clickbaity thumbnails, the crazy titles, the crazy descriptions, video lengths, those make or break a channel. Then do all the other stuff. Yeah, I'm not telling you to sell out and do formulaic stuff, but you need to learn the basic building blocks before you do anything else. And people do it backwards. Well, I'm going to just do a vlog, and like, no one's going to watch this. And, you know,
especially early on when you don't even have that audience yet.
Correct. And it's just, you've got to get the audience, and then you can do whatever you want. If you want to do vlogs about what sandwiches you ate for the day, fine. You have to know what YouTube wants and build your audience first.
I mean, there's people who make ice cream on TikTok, and I still watch it. It's just storytelling.
We never did the wallet thing.
Out of curiosity, what cards are in your wallet?
I have a US Bank business debit card. Okay. This is the only one you care about. I got a Capital One Spark, and I think I get 2% on these enabled pretty often. I got a car wash debit card, and it's a rewards debit card. I get like 0.5% back. I got a...
That's a lot of cards.
It's each one of my LLCs.
Okay.
I should probably do a virtual wallet with these cards, but I go to so many like contractor places, they don't do Google Pay. This is my slush fund for rentals. I do have an M1 Finance card. So here's what I like M1 Finance. You can auto balance different accounts. So what I can do is you can set a cap. So I have $250 in USD, and then I can have the rest in a fund. So then I can keep my money in like gold or silver or Tesla stock, and then just pull out money as I spend it. So then I can kind of fight inflation. I do have a current card. Ooh, yeah, I do have a current card because I did a sponsorship with them forever ago. And I got Lowe's for Pros, which is absolute crap. Every contractor card that I have out, I've seen, I absolutely unequivocally hate.
So what do you do with your credit card cashback? You just redeem it against the business stuff, or?
I save it for Christmas.
Okay.
So that's like our Christmas fund. This year I told Garrett, my wife, I'm like, hey, I've got $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 or whatever it was. I'm like, this will be a Christmas if you guys want to use it. And my wife is more frugal than I am, so she bought herself like a mop and a vacuum cleaner, and then we spent like $100 on the kids.
Have you considered doing points though, given that there's like a bit more upside, or you'd think that's just not a fit for what you...
The problem is, like, I'm sure I'm wrong here, but with points, it's mostly geared towards something that's in their sphere. Like if you got points for miles or hotels or food. And I just don't do enough traveling or stuff like that for it to make a ton of sense for me.
So I would say there's a lot of cards that earn on like everything else. So even for your Spark card, like there's ways to transfer it into miles, which then can be redeemed for airfare or hotels. But it sounds like that's not a core focus right now.
No, it's not really a core focus right now. Right now, it's, you know, cashback's fine. I just don't do a lot of the card stuff. But as time goes on, and if our family starts really traveling like we'd like to, then it's going to be a thing of me doing that, because sitting in 2 airports on the way here and people were just whipping out the frequent flyer card like, I want first class now. And I didn't think that you could do that on a packed airplane, but some lady pulled out a card and they were like, oh yeah, you get a free upgrade to first class. And I thought, well, that's cool. That was pretty awesome. Yeah. So it's like, well, I wish I had one of those right now.
And then if you ever decide to fly internationally, a 14-hour flight, I think it's just a lot more comfortable in business.
Oh yeah. My wife wants to go to Australia at some point.
Yeah, that's a long flight.
Yes, it is. And you've got, and there's either going to be a layover somewhere in Asia, and it's usually like a 24-hour on the airplane, and it'll be a disaster.
And it's not like you can't pay for it, but in my head, I'm like, well, do I want to spend, let's say, $2,000 worth of points that I didn't take cash back for, or do I want to pay like $8,000? Like, I don't want to pay $8,000.
Yeah, it totally makes sense on international flights, and it's something that, yeah, we get to that point, yeah, I will go to points the year before, and then we'll just plan it. I have never been out of the country. I illegally entered Canada one time.
Wait, what happened? So you like,
I was on a boat. We were fishing in Lake Erie.
Oh.
And we were right on the line, and this big giant storm hit, and they said, we need to pull up anchors. And they're like, we're going to drift for a while. And this storm hit, and it was like tornadic. And we were fishing through the tornado. It was like the best fishing of my life. And my phone started beeping. Welcome to Canada. Please note your date has been dropped because you're roaming. And I told the boat captain, I'm like, I think we're in Canada. And I'm like, we probably shouldn't be fishing here. And the guy's like, if I don't check the GPS, we're not in trouble. I'm like,
okay, at least no like agents came or anything.
At some point, they send the RCMP in, and they'll check you and make sure everything's legitimate. And I told the captain like twice, and at some point he checked the GPS. He's like, oh crap, we're in Canada. And I'm like, yeah, we should probably get out of here. And so he came back. We were like 2 miles over the international boundary.
I remember reading a story about some woman from Canada who was going on a morning jog who accidentally ran into America, I guess, on the beach, and then they arrested her for 2 weeks.
We did this fun game on my Discord channel, and it was finding all the border crossings in Canada to the United States. And there's a bunch in like New York, and we just absolutely loved it. It was the Google van, and it's this guy on a mower. He's mowing, obviously he's Canadian. He's mowing the United States ground. And I'm like, that cannot be illegal because there's an easement. There's an easement agreement between the United States and Canada that there's a border, and that has to be maintained in a certain way. And you can tell that this guy in Canada, he's just mad that the grass is too high. Some old guy on a riding lawnmower. He's mid-mow on the Google van, and you're like, oh my gosh, that he's getting in trouble because he just mowed this whole strip, Canada, the border, and in the United States. I'm sure it's in some guy's yard in the United States. The neighbor just doesn't care.
Do you have a lot of Canadian viewers?
4 to 5%. I'm more in the United Kingdom.
Really?
Yeah, I'm more in the United Kingdom than I do Canada, which is odd because I get British fan mail pretty often, and they ask me how to do my stuff in the UK, and I'm like, I don't know the terms for anything. US civil law and British civil law is very similar, but they've got different names for everything. I'm a big fan of master lease options, and I've got this master lease option course coming up. And I'm like, oh, this would be great to release to people in Britain because you guys do let-to-lets. And it's like, oh my gosh, I could never do that because everything else is termed different. Because I was explaining to a real high-level British real estate investor on how I do master leases with options. And he's like, oh yeah, we do a let-to-let. And I can't remember what they title an option. But it's not an option, it's something else. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't use these terms. But it's exact same concept, exact same contract.
Paperwork, different names of everything.
Totally different names for everything. I'm like, how can I communicate with these people? I can't, that's the problem. Certain kinds of shorts did really well in India. And there's some shorts that have probably 5 million views in India. I've got like one laundromat video that's done extravagantly well in India. It has like 1 million Indian views on it, and the CPM rate's absolute garbage. It's not as bad as I would have expected, but it's still pretty garbage.
Now, one trick I've seen villages in like Southeast Asia do is they'll just show their whole life. And I think the audience is not people from Southeast Asia. I think it's people from the US.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, this is so foreign to me.
I love Vietnamese fishing channels. I've watched a bunch of Vietnamese channels where they use cattle prods to fish. Which is so illegal in the United States. Oh my gosh, it's so illegal. But it's what they used to do in the South. They cattle prods and dynamite fishing. And there's people that still do it. There's subsistence farming in Vietnam with cattle prods. And I'm like, oh, they are living my best life right now. It's so cool.
I still feel like there's so much opportunity in social media that people
absolutely.
just don't take advantage of.
Yeah, especially if you've got a unique life situation. I think I've got a unique life situation being in the Midwest. So,
any other call to actions you want to make or plugs you want to do?
I mean, if someone wants to cash out me a bunch of money, you can.
Awesome. Go check out his channel. Thank you so much for sitting down with me and chatting.